After troubleshooting my conflict resolution sessions with the concert program, I came to the conclusion that I needed to alter the methodology in regard to delivering and conveying conflict resolution techniques and conflict resolution lessons from the Narratives Project. And so this new methodology is as follows. I plan to expose students to and help students create spoken word poetry in these conflict resolution sessions. And how conflict occurs and the nature of conflict has already been covered for the 2012 and 2013 school year within the concert program. And so I want these spoken word poetry sessions to focus on expressing personal conflict, taking action against conflict, and proposing solutions for conflict. And so the justification behind this new methodology is as follows. Spoken word poetry is an art form in which poetry is written and performed. As students write poetry, they're given more control and privacy over their internal and external conflicts than, let's say, open group discussion does, which I feel is more appropriate for some of the conflicts that these students are having to deal with. And so through writing poetry, I believe that students experience less ownership and pressure over what they say because of poetic license. So this allows them to indirectly describe and express solutions for conflicts as well. So when students begin performing poetry on conflict and conflict resolution, I believe that they empower themselves and their peers as their understanding of conflict and conflict resolution is made tangible to themselves and their audience. So I'm just going to give a quick overview and a quick run through of the lesson plans I've created so far for using spoken word poetry for conflict resolution sessions. And I'm sure this is going to be a huge work in progress. This is because this is my first time using spoken poetry in this manner. And so the methodology in regard to delivery is going to be heavily invested in spoken word poetry and poetry. However, the specific conflict resolution techniques and the lessons are directly from the Narratives Project and Center for Peacebuilding International. So I want to begin using spoken poetry by starting off a series of lessons in exposure and analysis of spoken word poetry. So when the first lesson, I've actually already completed this lesson, and in this lesson, I use a PowerPoint projector and YouTube videos, and I expose students to several famous poets and not so well-known poets, such as Maida Del Valle, Phil Kaye, Jamaica Osorio, and Sarah Kay. And in the next week for the next lesson, and we've also done this already as well, I asked the students to consider the following while watching some more performances, and I exposed students to basically half the performances we viewed in the last session. So they watched several of their favorites again, and I asked them, what kind of feelings does the poem evoke in you? What is the message or purpose? And most importantly, how does the poet convey the message or purpose in the performance? And so this is just very light, very superficial analysis of the poetry performances. And in the next week, we've already conducted this one too, and we engaged in deeper analysis where we selected as a class our favorite performance viewed so far, and I uploaded the transcript of the poem on the projector, and I would ask the students to identify their favorite phrases. And so and I also, of course, supplemented the list of their favorite phrases with some of my own of the most unique ones if they hadn't already mentioned it. And I would ask the students what each phrase describes specifically and write their answers on the board as well. And so I really wanted to emphasize and note how each phrase unconventionally describes a feeling or object and event, and emphasize that there is never a right or wrong description in poetry because of poetic license. In the next series of lessons, we focus on writing and performing spoken word poetry. And we begin with learning how to choose words carefully while writing poems. And so, this is one of, as Sarah Kay, the renowned spoken poet, said, this is one of the most important things in spoken word poetry. And so, what we will do in the following week actually is we're going to vote as a class on a specific feeling, object, or event to describe, such as an apple, for example. And then I would ask the class to provide unconventional phrases to describe the thing that we've chosen, and emphasize that all five senses can be used and that everybody has poetic license, so there's no right or wrong way to describe or express. And also emphasize the importance of showing and not telling. So I would ask the students to choose their words carefully and don't feel the need to spell out or completely explain everything they're saying. And I would provide an example of my own, such as for apples. Apples are hollow rubies, and the skin bursts in sparkling gem shards in my mouth. Something completely unconventional, something that you would normally you would never use to describe an apple. And then for the next week, we would focus on writing on conflict and expressing personal conflict. So this would be on an individual basis, and so I would separate the students and ask the students to write a short poem about 5 to 10 lines on an internal or an external conflict, and I would offer assistance if necessary, but mostly allow for a free writing session. And so this is another way of giving and more control and privacy to the students in regard to what kind of conflicts they wish are there that they are going to share, and how they're going to express these conflicts. And this is not in front of all their peers. They don't have to go through the process of refining what they use and how they use it in front of their peers. They can do the refining process on their own. And in the next week, I want to focus on writing on conflict resolution and taking action. And so I want to explain to the class that people are often paralyzed with fear when they see an injustice happening around them, and the students should practice speaking up when they see unfairness, or sticking up for themselves and others who are being discriminated against or who are victims of prejudice. And so I would ask the students to share an experience about a time where they stood silently by when an injustice was occurring, and via a middle length poem, so this would be about 10 to 15 lines, and to consider the following questions, such as: did you consider intervening? What prevented you from intervening? And how did you feel watching the injustice? And I want to, uh, and then for the next lesson the following week, I would want us to write on conflict resolution and building bridges this time. And so I would ask the students to write a follow-up poem to the one they already composed the week before, and consider the answers to these following questions. If you were a victim in this scenario, what would you have wanted somebody watching to do? If you were an observer and could go back, how would you change your actions? And what kind of advice would you give to people in the situation in the future? And the week after that, and this concludes my second series of lessons, we would be refining the poems and performing the poems. And so this is when I would hold individual conference sessions in separate rooms with students, and so I would assist the students privately on improving their poems stylistically or in any other way they wish, or answer any questions they had. And also in these individual conferences, I would ask the students to perform their poems for me, and so I could assist them on refining their poetry performance. And I do want to leave them the option of not performing in front of me if they want to do that on their own. And so in the following weeks to come, I hope to upload actual video footage of these spoken word poetry sessions. Thank you for listening.